Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a representative from Jumptuit.
There are two main lines of research. One is biological, based on the idea that since humans are intelligent, AI should study humans and imitate their psychology or physiology. The other is phenomenal, based on studying and formalizing common sense facts about the world and the problems that the world presents to the achievement of goals. The two approaches interact to some extent, and both should eventually succeed. That's John McCarthy, the father of AI. And we're focused on the latter. What lies beyond large language models? Anticipatory intelligence, the next stage in artificial intelligence. Our mission is to see the world not through language, but through data. To observe phenomena through its reflection in data. To better understand the order and intelligence of the universe through observation, and to make visible the factors and interactions that precede the genesis of geopolitical, environmental, and public health events. Genesis J2T is a decentralized learning framework consisting of interlocking modules that communicate across sectors, disciplines, and geographies, sharing real-time data and insights, and accelerating learning that critically advances the accuracy of forecasting. Genesis J2T continuously analyzes cross-sector live data streams via a unique data conduit. Data streams reflect natural phenomenon and form a confluence of tributaries through which patterns and correlations in data are observed and measured at the meeting point of human activity and environmental phenomenon. In live data streams is where we find the precursors to events in the form of currents and eddies. Genesis J2T performs continuous, live, synchronized assessments of cross-sector data, forecasting systemic risk and market opportunities, generating geopolitical, environmental, and public health inflection points for strategic action. In the artificial intelligence space, Genesis J2T is a new technology in the emerging field of anticipatory intelligence, minimizing reliance on centralized processing, historical data, and manual intervention, all characteristics of generative AI, large language models, and chatbots. Genesis J2T enables continuous high-resolution analysis of diverse and complex data sets, allows for critical understanding of precedent conditions, and improves the ability to anticipate and respond to emerging developments. Genesis J2T anticipates the unexpected to avoid, circumvent, and bypass unfavorable conditions, reroute and pre-position assets, and increase resiliency to preempt and thwart the impact of future geopolitical and environmental events. Anticipatory intelligence is risk mitigation. Anticipatory intelligence is deterrence. And anticipatory intelligence is the first line of defense. The building blocks of anticipatory intelligence include synchronizing live global sensory observation, expanding the electromagnetic spectrum range, discerning pertinent data, understanding cross-discipline, cross-sector relationships and data, analyzing complex situations, considering future outcomes, exhibiting innate inquisitiveness and even generating spontaneous queries, questioning sources and classifications of data, exhibiting strategic thinking without the limitations of human bias and emotions, forecasting risks and opportunities, augmenting the human spatial experience with the environment, and improving decision-making, not making decisions for people. Genesis J2T synchronizes millions of real-time data endpoints via its Global Sensory Intelligence, GSI, and Global Data Nets, GDNs. Genesis J2T retrieves real-time, hyper-localized data to assess geopolitical, environmental, and public health events, and encompasses atmospheric, terrestrial, and oceanic conditions, and human activity and artificial systems. Genesis J2T's Global Sensory Intelligence accesses millions of globally dispersed real-time data endpoints, synchronizes global observation across spectrums and frequencies, and discovers probable events through sensor observation and dynamic analysis and forecasting of co-occurring variables. Virtually all global events are the result of a multitude of cross-sector variables. Genesis J2T's global data nets provide unfiltered observation of human activity and systems, and unbiased data in its original state, replacing narrative-based analysis and reports with the veracity of neutral observation process, bypassing search engine filtration and global news organization curation, and accessing real-time, hyper-localized data in every region of the world. The most valuable data in this world is raw, hyper-localized data. And here's a visualization of cross-sector data across geolocations and time. And now we're going to give you a demonstration. So Genesis J2T continuously analyzes stress indices for every bilateral relationship in the world. We live in a time where bilateral relationships between countries have taken precedence over multilateral relations. And so it's critical that we can dynamically monitor all of these relationships. And Genesis J2T does this for land bordering countries. So this is China, and these are all of the land bordering countries that you see here. It does it for maritime bordering countries, and even undefined maritime bordering countries. It does the same for regional countries, whether it's regional powers or other countries in the region, and for geostrategic players. And from there, you can take a deep dive. So here you can see we're looking at the bilateral comparison view of China and the United States. So we're assessing currency, key economic indicators. So for example, you can see GDP per capita. The United States is close to about $90,000 GDP per capita, where China's at about 13,500. So huge difference in terms of buying power between Americans and Chinese, and shows the absolute critical nature of the US market to net exporters in the world. Market cap, another critical metric that's overlooked, and you can see here the US market cap at about $60 trillion versus China, which is at about $7.5 trillion. 3 American companies would constitute all of the market cap of China. You can see here what percentage of ownership China has in terms of US public debt, and it's only 2.11%. So it's a lot smaller than has been amplified in a lot of media reports. And you can see the trade imbalance here, where there's a significant trade imbalance for the United States in relation to China. You see the dynamic tariff rates that we track that affect the bilateral stress indexes between the countries. And then we're able to look at longer-term forecasts to see, for example, in this case, general government gross debt. And in this instance, you can see that China's debt is increasing at a much higher rate than U.S. debt. So we'll go a little bit further now, a little bit deeper. So you can see some of the trade data. And from China's perspective, the United States is its #1 export partner. And these are dynamic. So what's important to understand is we're tracking all of this data, and over 80% of our forecasting is based on raw data. And we'll take a look at the regional trade agreements. So we're monitoring these trade agreements to see who the new signatories are, what signatories have left these multilateral trade groups or bilateral trade groups, and understanding the incremental effect it has on all of the geopolitical dynamics. In the all-important category of critical minerals and rare earths, we can go right into critical minerals, select a critical mineral, like antimony here, and we can see what the sector dependencies are for our companies, and specifically what companies have dependencies and exposures. We can do the same thing for gallium. And all these affect the overall dynamics, the economic dynamics, the stress indices, et cetera. So that's gallium and germanium as well. And again, all of this data is dynamic. And then, of course, we're also tracking rare earths, which have been absolutely critical. We track, in terms of rare earths, not just documented and regulated mines, but undocumented and unregulated mines in the world, because all of these play a factor in the overall risk assessment. Okay. So let's jump up here and look at some of the trending analysis of events that are occurring. So here, you can see some of the key individuals that are currently trending. So Xi Jinping, other top leadership in China, Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, and others, individuals. So we're tracking statements and actions, official, unofficial statements that are being made. We're tracking key organizations, including the largest companies in China, in this instance, that are critical to their market cap and the size of their overall market cap, as well as intergovernmental organizations that are playing a role, and RTAs, ratified trade agreements as well. In terms of events, this is a very dynamic chart. So as you can see here, we're tracking right now trending trade, war, export, drones, aircraft, talks. So all of these variables, economic variables, military variables, diplomatic variables, are constantly in motion. Everything is constantly in motion. And this is why static reports are outdated today, because of the volatility and the speed of the events that are underway. So the ability to monitor this without interpretation, just the raw data, is critical to make better business decisions and better policy decisions. And you can see all of the sources that we're connecting to. So the Ministry of Commerce, People's Republic of China, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the People's Republic of China, many official Western sources. All of this is risk assessment. We are translating this from every language in the world into English in this instance, but it could be for a user in another country, translating it into that language. So it's just extensive, it's continuous analysis. The analysis can be done every hour, it can be done every minute, it could be done every second, depending on how dynamic the event is. Okay. And all of this data that you see here feeds into our stability indices for China. And so there are these natural channels, whether it's environmental, whether it's public health, involving viruses or other things, or whether it's geopolitical and human activity. Data reflects all of these types of activities. And so there are these natural channels that don't require this manual classification you see with generative AI. Right now, there are millions of people in the world who are engaged in data classification and data annotations. Countries like Kenya, Cambodia, Vietnam, Venezuela, other countries. It's a manual process. That's how generative AI operates. It has a lot of human interpretation and a lot of human interference in what actually is being observed. Our view is we want to observe things as clearly as we can without that interpretation. So now I'm going to give you a company view. We'll take a different look at from a different point of view. And so we'll take a company like Apple that has a large supply chain globally. And so this is Apple's supply chain. And for Apple, we're assessing supply chain risk in East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, every region of the world. The risk is geo-segmented market risk as well, because as we know, the US market, Apple could have a lot of exposure because of potential tariffs, which will cause the price of the iPhone and wearables, Apple wearables, to go up. In those instances, their exposure might be greater in the Americas than it might be in China or other markets overseas. We have product segmented risk, so we know specifically based on the volume and how much revenue they generate, what products are most likely to be impacted, whether it's the iPhone, wearables. Service revenue, for example, in the case of Apple, is significant, and it's less directly impacted by, obviously, tariffs. And we have all of this financial information, as you can see here, for Apple. And what we do for Apple, we can do for any company, any publicly traded company. So here, we'll just jump in on Apple again. And even on a country-by-country basis, we're able to assess market risk. And this is dynamic and this is continuous. It doesn't stop. And let's pick a different company. Let's go to Amazon. And so you'll see the same types of assessments for Amazon. And we'll take a look at Nike as well. So you have your risk assessments that are dynamically done. Okay. And we'll segue now to a third element of our demo. And so here we're going to take a quick look at some strategic locations in the US. So we can zero down into any location, and we can see what's happening at those locations right now. So our algorithms track and count, what the backlog is it decreasing because of slowdowns in exports and other dynamics. And we do this for every port. So we have all the critical ports, as you can see here. Okay. And we track here, I'll back up a little bit so you get a view of this now, all of the activity in the waterways. So you can see the ocean data. Those are all data points for us. All of these ships we're able to ping and pull data from any of those locations. Infrasonic data. We're tracking deep sea mining locations around the world. So it's extensive. We could spend hours and days going through all of this data. But I want to wrap it up with one more view for you. And so we're going to take a look at some strategic locations in China. Yeah, close that up. Sorry, guys. There we go. So here are some of the key strategic U.S. locations in the world and in the region. And we're monitoring all of these. And we do conditions forecasting, which is environmental, geopolitical, all of the above. And we'll go into China here. So you can see here some of the key bases in China. And we'll just take a deeper dive now. Okay. So we can go down to a specific ship, forecast what the conditions are for a single ship in a critical area, and forecast what those conditions will be. And we'll give you another conditions forecast as well here. The same. So this is all about observation-based data. It's about unbiased data, it's about unfiltered data, because that's the best way we're going to understand what the probabilities of events that may occur in the future, and we can base our policy on that. We can mitigate against risk, whether it's corporate leaders or government leaders, and protect the investments that we make. Thank you very much.